Hey, Grace Avenue and Grace Chapel families. I am here with Alleigh Carthy, who is a member of Grace Avenue. Looking forward to hearing her story. We are in our series Widen the Scream, and that means we are looking forward to expanding our perspectives on different things in the world, what other people might call issues, and instead ask how God is calling us to expand our understanding and to see things more broadly. So, Alleigh, thank you so much for being here today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Would you mind telling me a little about yourself?
Sure. I am currently a middle school counselor here in Frisco. I was born and raised in Lubbock, Texas. I am one of two. I have an older brother, mom and a dad. I was kind of the black sheep in many ways. It's kind of a joke now, but I went to, back when it was Southwest Texas State, I was the only one that left Lubbock. Everybody else went to Tech. But yeah, I had a great childhood, kind of picture perfect, as they would say. Very loving family, very caring family. Played sports my entire life. Always had my parents at every event imaginable. Family vacations, I mean, you name it, we had it. So very blessed in that regard with some fond memories of my childhood. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. So you mentioned being the black sheep of your family. So you're talking about college.
Talking about college and a little prior. I'm not anymore. It was kind of a joke. But yeah, there was about 14, 15 years old, I started questioning my sexuality. And I didn't have the opportunity to tell my family, but they did find out. And it was a very pivotal turning point in my life.
So they found out. Did that have something to do with your sports experiences, or?
No, they actually found out. I believe I had written a letter. I'm a writer. I journal and write, and that's how they found out. And I wasn't disowned from the family by any means. Like I said, I have a very, very loving mother and father. It just wasn't well received. I was raised in the church. I know what beliefs that I was raised with. And there wasn't initially, and I say initially because over many, many years we are in a much different place. But back then there just wasn't an atmosphere for me to share my true feelings and to kind of navigate and ask questions. It was kind of, no, this is a sin. This is what we learned. How are we going to get through this and fix it?
So you were raised with these beliefs, right, about sin. What that do for you, right? So you having these own experiences where you have your own questions, right, seeming to find your own answers, but like you're a person of faith, right? You're here today, right? So how was that for you?
It was really hard. I went to a counselor, psychologist that I really connected with, and I was a teenager. I mean, I still lived under my parents, so we all know how that goes. They didn't really prefer me to go to that person because they wouldn't share what I was sharing within my time with them, which they didn't have to because I was okay. I was just sharing my feelings. So then they decided to send me to a Christian counselor. And literally within the first 5 minutes of that session, he looked at me and said, here's a fence, here's heaven, here's hell, you're here. If you continue to live this lifestyle, you'll go this direction while your family goes this direction. And it still hits me because I still get that feeling anytime I talk about it, and I really don't. I've never shared that part with a lot of people. But it was a very defining moment. I distanced myself from the church, but I didn't distance myself from God. And that sounds really interesting to people, but I never felt convicted. Like, I didn't feel like I was living in sin, but from what I was taught and where we went to church it was actually a United Methodist church. At that point, I decided to distance myself from the church just because it was like, hey, we welcome you, but stay right here. Like, to this point, you're welcome. you know, because we don't affirm like who you are or where you're going in life. So lots of heaviness for a 14, 15-year-old to navigate.
Right.
So,
And so here we are 20 plus years later, and you seem to have navigated through that well.
I did.
So how did you make that shift?
You know, it was kind of like a little slogan I used, like faith forward. Like my faith was going to propel me through anything. That doesn't mean that I didn't have really, really difficult years. I mean, 15 to 25 was extremely difficult, as it is for any teenager or young adult at that time. And we go through a lot of changes, but I was navigating in some pretty tough waters, I felt like, on my own. And I say on my own, my family was always there. I was always welcome home. We had a very loving relationship, but again, it was very surface because we weren't to that place yet. But definitely my faith is really the only reason I'm probably sitting here, because I had some pretty dark and heavy times that I had to figure out on my own because I didn't feel like I had anybody at home to go to, and that's where I wanted to go. I had friends, I had, you know, uncles, I had all those people, but the people at that time in my life who I wanted to count on, I couldn't yet. And I say yet because it's much different now.
Okay, so you couldn't count on them yet. So you have about 10 years, so you can't count on them. And when was the first time you knew you could?
I actually wrote him a letter, back to the letter writing. It was pretty much, I just kind of had to take a hard stance with who I was and where I was going, because I couldn't keep teetering back and forth of like living one life and coming home and kind of having to shut off. Like, it just wasn't healthy. And I just wrote him a letter, and it took him a little bit to respond. But ever since then, I truly feel like they're like, we got to figure it out. Like, we're going to lose our daughter. Because I couldn't keep doing it any longer. And since then, our relationship has changed, our spiritual walk has changed. But yeah, I would say it was that time. It was about when I was 25 years old. So.
Thank you for sharing all of that. And I'm interested to know more about you knowing that other people who are faithful may have questions about whether or not God accepts you as you are, but you having this deep sense of knowing that, well, God is still here, God still loves me, even if people who say they believe in God may not feel that way.
I can remember, like, when I would sit in church, I mean, I went to big church, Sunday school, church camp, like, that was just a part of my upbringing, and I loved it, and I'm here today because of that. But when I heard God loves me and made me just the way He wanted me, like, that just resonated. It's very simple, but I never deviated from that. Because again, I didn't feel like I was made wrong, you know? And so I would tell myself literally that every single day. And I did have one of my uncles, he was a member at another Methodist church in Lubbock, who even back then believed that it wasn't a sin, and very much. So I did have him to kind of bounce some ideas off of. But it was really just that simple. Like, God loves me and made me imperfectly, perfectly me. So that's really it.
Yeah. And now here you are.
And now here I am.
In a Methodist church still.
Yes.
United Methodist Church, that is now, a denomination that's still trying to answer the same question that basically you lived through, right? You grew up in one United Methodist church that may have told you one thing. Down the road, there was another United Methodist church that was teaching another.
Sure.
And here we are in this sort of like similar impasse years later. How do you feel about living in the tension of all of that?
Tension's inevitable. I mean, I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon, but I'm living in my truth, and I feel like my testimony, hopefully, if it just reaches one person or helps one person through it, that's all we can do, you know, and I just feel like it's a trickle effect. Yeah. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Alleigh, for sharing. We appreciate that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And,
No,
I was going to say, you know, and this really isn't one of your questions, but I do want to share, like, hindsight's always 20/20, right? And the thing that I've learned the most is, like, I don't fault my parents for anything at all. Even I as a parent, I mean, I have 2 toddlers, so I'm parenting them based on my experiences and my life experiences and my views. My parents did the same thing. You know, so it's like, even though there were some really difficult years, I don't fault them for that. You know, I mean, and I think that that's when we need to show a lot of grace, a lot of empathy, which my journey has definitely taught me. Like, I live with grace and empathy every single day, and I encourage everybody around me to do the same thing, because we're not going to understand everything. But it's in that not understanding, like, give yourself grace and the space to learn before you judge, before you make your own opinions. So there's been a lot of life-changing views within myself and my family because of my journey. So
Thank you.
yeah, you're welcome.